I think pretty much everybody fully expected the new F4F Ice to be the worst plane of the patch, but I wouldn't stop there. I'd go as far as to say that the F4F Ice is just straight up the worst top tier in the game right now. Top tier being from 13.0 to 12.7, of course, just those upper battle ratings nearly maxed out. This thing is a chronic pain in the ass to play, and especially would be so if you had to stock grind it. If that's you, bless your soul, I really feel bad for you. If you're looking to speed up the process, maybe you want to GE some of the modifications, check out today's video sponsor, GE for War Thunder. GE for War Thunder is an app available on the Google Play Store in which you will complete tasks of varying difficulty. The payout in Golden Eagles is determined by how difficult the task was to do, and the more Golden Eagles you guys accumulate using my link in the description down below, I can do Golden Eagle giveaways. So get yourself that modification or maybe a day of premium for grinding using my link in the description down below for 10 extra Golden Eagles. Ironically enough, the gameplay you're about to watch are actually some pretty high kill games. I think I have a couple 4, maybe 5 kill games in here, and I really haven't touched the F4F Ice that much, but you really don't need to know what this plane is all about. The couple of games that I did play, as I said, I actually ironically did pretty well in, but that is not to say that this plane is good. It is actually terrible, and I never want to touch it again, to be honest. What makes it so bad? If you're getting these 5 kill games, what you're doing on screen is obviously working. You're doing BVR tactics and staying at far ranges, shooting your missiles, and going defensive. Isn't that exactly what you're supposed to do? Well, I mean, I guess kind of, but let's get into exactly why the F4F Ice is a bad plane. Starting off with some of the more obvious stuff, for starters, it has a pretty low amount of countermeasures compared to what is becoming more and more standard at top tier. Planes like the F-15, like the Gripen, like the Mirage 2000, have a lot of countermeasures. Hell, even something like the F-16C carrying like 25% more countermeasures than the F-4E, and it doesn't even have all that much for what is considered a good amount in today's top tier. So you would really like to see more countermeasures, mainly because IRCCM still does exist. It's not quite as common to see IRCCM everywhere at the moment, but it does exist and it is going to take a lot of flares. Unfortunately, however, not only do you need a lot of flares, but you need tons of chaff, and I've actually been running more chaff than I have flares lately. And so the F4F Ice just does not have enough countermeasures for what you would consider a comfortable amount. Can you make it work? Absolutely, you can make it work if you play like a really passive you-know-what, but it's just not optimal. Aside from that, what else isn't optimal is that it doesn't have HMD, and that's another one of those features that is really nice quality of life. It used to be something that wasn't really a deal breaker, it was just really nice to have. But in today's top tier, where you're slinging these active radar homing missiles, and it's pretty much the first guy that can get it off and then get 90 degrees to chaff, at closer ranges anyways, that's the guy that's going to live. And having an HMD to get that radar lock first is going to be a massive advantage, and if you can't do that, it extremely limits you in your close range fighting capability. And then lastly, of course, let's address the elephant in the room. It is an F4E Phantom, going up against F-15s, Su-27s, Mirages, Gripens, etc. You get the point, and that is quite problematic. Now, as many of you probably want to bring up, in the past, haven't I always said that flight performance really doesn't matter that much? Well, yes, but that's only to a certain extent. Something like the Harrier, for example, that can't even go supersonic, is going to have a really tough time competing with top tiers. When I say flight performance doesn't matter, I mean as long as they're all kind of somewhat capable of staying supersonic, getting supersonic, and not losing too much energy, just doing simple combat maneuvers and turning around and changing direction and whatnot, yeah, flight performance isn't that big of a deal. But when you have something like the F4F Phantom, which is a 1960s airframe, can't even accelerate through Mach in a climb like all of the other top tier jets can, it's terrible at turning, it doesn't pull that many Gs, it loses energy extremely fast, it has the absolute worst possible flight characteristics for a top tier. And that is when it is going to matter. Especially so because what you're left with is a plane that solely relies on its missiles, and it does have the best active radar homing missiles in the game right now. The AMRAAMs, in my opinion, are definitely the missiles you want to have. And it does get 4 of them, so it's not an insignificant amount, it's definitely a workable amount. The problem is that today's top tier, well, besides the fact that it sucks, and I'm going to get into that for another video, and honestly I think this is probably one of the worst updates I've ever seen for top tier, and that's saying something. The current gameplay loop is pretty much either you're going to hug the deck and take your chances with getting multipath, maybe you'll successfully pull it off at below 50 meters despite having 75-meter tall trees everywhere on the map. That makes a lot of sense, guys, and thank you. Or you could try the safer method of gameplay where you do the long range BVR, go forward at the enemy, then turn around and go defensive, then go forward again and shoot another missile and turn around and go defensive, and hopefully maybe one of your missiles hits. Probably won't, because they're going to be doing the exact same thing. And then eventually one of you just gets impatient enough to where you get too close, or maybe you get third, fourth, and fifth partied by other people's AMRAAMs from other directions and you just can't notch them all at once. No matter how you slice it, this plane is at a disadvantage. If you're going to go that route, well, everyone's going to be higher than you because they climb better than you, they're going to be going faster than you, so they have way more range on their AMRAAMs than what you can do, which means you're going to be going defensive first because you have to, otherwise you're just going to be eating their missile. And then when you go to turn in to recommit and re-engage, well, you have no HMD to lock them up with, so they're going to have a missile off long before you ever get your nose around, and you're going to have to go defensive again before you even fire one off. Or if you want to play the hug the ground game and get more close to people, your flight performance is going to let you down terribly, and everyone's going to get right on your 6. You don't have enough flares and chaff to defeat 6 incoming missiles like you saw in the beginning of the clip, nor do you just have the situational awareness in 16 versus 16 top tier with all of these active radars flying around everywhere. It is an absolute cluster. But can't you just turn off 16 versus 16 and opt into these smaller matches? Yeah, but it still only gives you 12 versus 12 and it only happens like roughly 30% of the time. Granted, that is still a lot better than on patch day when I played a lot of matches and got 0 smaller games. I guess because nobody had that switch turned on yet, so it's probably a little bit more popular now. Either way though, 12 versus 12, only 30% of the time, absolutely not enough. In the end of the day, of course, you can and will get kills in the F4F ice. That's just the nature of top tier missile combat. But that's not to say that pretty much every single other top tier jet in the game at your battle rating is going to be better than you in pretty much every single way possible. Again, flight performance, forget about it. Everybody's going to be flying circles around you and there's nothing you can do about that. You have a low amount of countermeasures, and if you want to play the BVR route, well, everyone else is going to be doing that way better than you as well, and probably preventing you from being able to do it in the first place unless you're baiting your teammates or flying way in the back of the map, and you just kind of wait to see what happens as far as winning or losing the match. It's kind of just going to happen to you, and you're going to see how many kills you can get along the way without really having any kind of decisive factor into whether or not you win. I'm a little torn about whether or not this plane could go down to 12.3 because on one hand, the AMRAAMs at 12.3 already exist on planes like the Harrier. On the other hand, 8 missiles, 4 AMRAAMs, and 4 essentially AIM-9Ms might be a little bit too strong at 12.3. I wasn't worried about it before, but now again with 60-meter multipath and 75-meter tall trees, putting the AMRAAM at that low of a battle rating where it might very commonly fight 11.3s, especially so the premiums, they probably don't have a lot of countermeasures. They kind of are going to have to rely on flying low to the deck to avoid these missiles, and they're just not going to be able to. And never mind even down tiering the F4F to 12.3, this just goes for everything in general. God forbid you have to fight one of these planes with active radar homing missiles and you're either stock or you only have access to SAR missiles. You may as well just leave the plane because you're going to stand absolutely no chance now that you can't reliably multipath missiles. Kind of ironic to me that the community is constantly complaining about the stock grind, yet they're clapping their hands and cheering for the fact that you have no way to adequately grind these planes stock if you are unfortunate enough to be grinding something that goes against active radars every single game that you can't multipath and you have nothing to fight back with. This whole video has kind of been a rant, I get that, but I do want to end with a rant that is a little bit more unrelated to the F4F. I know everybody was really anticipating these active radar missiles. I know a lot of people are really interested in modern jet combat, and this is kind of the way that it works. I understand that, but once the shiny new feel of all this wears down, I think people are really going to see into the issues of how chronically broken top tier is right now because of the multipath change in combination with 16 versus 16 top tier and active radar homing missile introduction. That's all I've got for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see ya.